It's easy to open up your own billing company, which is a blessing and a curse. So
Correct.
that's why you have some bad players out there. I think the majority of the people who open up their own companies, they want to do the right thing. But, if there's no barrier to entry, if there's no certificate, if there's no whatever, then how do they know they're supposed to have a dedicated HIPAA-compliant computer that their kids don't search anything on?
I'm a big believer in the password managers.
It's a problem. The password manager itself needs to be HIPAA-compliant too.
The biggest thing I'm seeing a problem happening is that two-step verification.
We make dental billing and insurance easier to understand. Subscribe to stay updated and help us grow the channel.
I hear on the road that it's been troublesome to manage all of the portals and all of the sites. And how have you advised your clients to, is it a master document with all the passwords? Is it a password manager? Is it just one person? How are you seeing? Because just the management of the portals and passwords is like crazy.
I'm a big believer in the password managers. There's two particular that people lean towards that I've worked with. LastPass, but if you do the professional level, you do need to pay for it. Both are HIPAA compliant, but there's that extra level. And then the other one is Unify. The nice part with any of that is, well, first off, the doctor's email has to be the setup with it, first off and foremost.
Yes.
And no offense to any office manager, insurance coordinator, I love all of you, but you're not always going to be there. And so the doctor needs to set that up. It needs to go to the doctor's private email so that any changes can come from him or her. And it's nice because then if someone leaves, you just remove their ability and you change that password. The other thing is that way Mary changed a password and put it on the Post-it note that then got thrown out and nobody knows the new one. It doesn't happen.
Yes, that does happen.
And like you said, you can work from home. A lot of these password portals are now making you change the password. They're forcing you into it every 3 months, whether you want to or not. Yeah. And you can't just keep recycling smile 123 exclamation point, smile 123 asterisk. They will not allow that anymore. The biggest thing I'm seeing a problem happening is that two-step verification. And that hopefully the office has the ability for a text to come through to their phone number. But that's one of the glitches I'm seeing happen. I don't know if you've heard, but I do know that some of the websites are starting to allow more than one sign up so that it can go to their personal phone number. You just have to, if that person leaves, eliminate that one.
Yeah, and it is a good idea to have it go to the office because even if you're working from home, if you have like access to like the Revenue Well or Solution Reach or whatever, you can see it and intercept that, for your multi-factor, but it's a problem. And so a lot of times, you and I advise the same, like the doctor is the one that has to own that whole thing. But, what if they're away and you need to log in? And this is what we hear from our billing company friends. Like, we have to figure out a better way on this. Unify has been great. I hear some good things about it. But the HIPAA compliance piece is something that I don't think a lot of people think about, that the password manager itself needs to be, HIPAA compliant too.
Correct.
So it's, boy, all the stuff we have to worry about. And so here's another question that comes from that. You and I were talking earlier about EFTs. What's the rumble on the street about EFTs and how are your audiences feeling about it? I'll tell you, mine are split and we can talk about that. Mine are split.
Sometimes the biggest barrier to the EFTs is the doctor themselves, because maybe they started it, but they put it in with their regular bank account. And I'm a big believer in those EFTs should go into their own account so it's clean.
Yes.
Yes, I understand you can pull them out through QuickBooks and all this other stuff, but inevitably something gets missed because there's so many different ways those EFTs come in. So the doctors push back a lot because they say, oh, I'm not going to know how. And like we talked about, I'll have part of a course that I'll have online is going to train you how to set up those EFTs. Good. When I did it in the last practice I worked in, I had a doctor who was not big on them. I pushed her into it because I knew the efficiency of it. And I also knew it's where I can get paid faster. I want to make sure, and I know it's the trend. I'm going to date myself here. When I started at MetLife, electronic claims were new.
Yeah.
Paper claims were dot matrix printer paper claims were the norm. Those of you that don't know what that is, go Google it. If you're young enough to not know what dot matrix printer is.
And then laugh, because that's what we did.
Yeah. But I know when I was at MetLife, they wanted the electronic claims. That was top priority coming in the door. And the same thing's happening with the EFTs. They want the EFTs, so they're going to pay that faster. So I think that from the setup, there's a lot of different ways you can do it. You just need to make sure that it's systematic and you're not missing things and letting it cut through the cracks, because I don't want to call an insurance after 30 days and find out they paid me 3 weeks ago and I missed it.
Yeah.
But the doctors are some of the biggest pushback. And those of us that have been in the field a long time that are set in our ways also kind of push it back and don't want to do it. Because I think it's no different than we went from paper claims to a sheet that I had to do my follow-up on. It's that same. I tell anybody that's hesitant with me, I look at them and go, listen, I remember my A to Z. And again, I'm dating myself here. I remember my copy of my claims, and going from that to a report was tough, but it's the same idea. We have to move with the times.
Well, and the format of the ERAs has not been easy to read. And I know that's one thing. You and I are members of the National Association of Dental Plans. And, we sit in on some of these meetings. And on one of the meetings, they were like, well, we need more EFT uptake, because what happened with Change Healthcare, is that a lot of people started distrusting the EFTs because they lost the ability to get paid, all that kind of stuff. And it was no fault of, the other carriers, but when something happens like that, people go to checks because it's tried and true and all that stuff. And so the EFTs, they're seeing people decide to move away from them. And I said to them, your ERAs are a mess. Like, if I could read your ERAs, I'd be set for EFTs everywhere. But your ERAs are difficult. And like you said, if you lose one day of reconciliation, it's like a snowball effect. And that's another thing. So let's segue into something else, because what I have seen, especially with the insurance section of Revenue Cycle growing, is that it's not just one person that can handle it anymore. You and I used to do insurance plus check people out, plus occasionally assist, plus answer the phones. And it's just not possible anymore. No. But even the insurance coordinator position, you could do full-time just payment entering at this point in time. So are you finding that doctors are realizing this administrative burden, or are they trying to not that they're trying to overload, but I really feel like that's where the burnout is that our industry doesn't realize how these job duties have splintered so much.
So I think the plus is the younger dentists see it. The interesting trend, I will say, is the number one call I've gotten in the last 2 months of people that are possibly interested in working with me have been dentists that are out of school about 5 years, who would bought a practice, maybe under 10, and realize that they're not doing that part right, and they never learned it, and they're learning it on top of their team. I think younger dentists are definitely more open and understand. The struggle comes into that dentist that's in that 45 to 60-year-old range, that they remember it the way it was, and I don't think they've realized, like you said. They don't realize how much that burden has happened. One of the ways I've explained it to some of them, because sometimes you have to get very basic, is how much more does your clinical team have to worry about for training and for OSHA and for like all of those various things that have grown that we have to train on every year. The same kind of idea. Sometimes you have to bring it back to their own way of thinking.
What's the typical makeup that you see? Because you go into more offices than I do at this point. So you go into an office, maybe 3-4 providers. Do you see 2 people doing insurance, 3 people doing insurance? Do you see at that point there's an outsourcing? Like, what are you typically seeing?
I'm seeing one very overburdened person, and I got called in because they need help. And I'm finding that outsourcing is a great idea with the right office and with the right outsource. And I say that because one of the biggest things, I get a lot of phone calls from outsource gone bad.
Yeah.
Because on top of it, they don't understand that just because you're outsourced doesn't mean there's nobody in the office that still has work to do. And so that part gets lost. I think that I see a lot of 2 people handling insurance, one doing verifications, and that's all they do all day long.
Wow.
And then that other person that's entering. So that revenue cycle is almost ending up 3 people, depending on the size of the practice, because then you have to have that person billing. The AR is not always the person entering. And depending on the size of that practice, it's full time to get those breakdowns because they're so complex now.
Yeah. It used to be so easy, 80-50, 180-50.
180-50.
deductible never moved. I mean, it was just so
I know.
easy. Now it's so different. You got to look at, is it self-insured? Is it fully insured? Is it Medicare Advantage? Is it, is the person 6 feet tall on a Tuesday?
Right. I always say, do I have to ride a zebra backwards and do a flip off of it into the snow?
Yeah, it's gotten a little crazy. I think the billing company issue is starting to normalize. You and I know a lot of different billing company owners, and it's easy to open up your own billing company, which is a blessing and a curse. So
correct.
That's why you have some bad players out there. I think the majority of the people who open up their own companies, they want to do the right thing. But, if there's no barrier to entry, if there's no certificate, if there's no whatever, then how do they know they're supposed to have a dedicated HIPAA-compliant computer that their kids don't search anything on? That's just scary stuff. And I know you and I have had those horror stories with clients where they've lost data or whatever. So there is, I think, a growing call for the insurance coordinator position to definitely be recognized and on its own. And I'm glad that you're starting to see that. And I agree, the younger dentists are definitely seeing it.
If you learned something new today, subscribing is the best way to support the channel and keep learning with us.
Would you like to hear more? Follow the link for the full episode.